Good morning, YouTube, BookTube. This is Johnny. Yeah, this is the Monday Reads. It is 8:33 in the morning here in Holland, Michigan. It is a Monday morning. It is March the 1st, 2021. Yeah, the death flow keeps flowing. The existence keeps decaying. So I am writing in my diary on March the 1st, 2021. I'm on page 220 for the year 2021. My wife just left to have breakfast with a friend, then go grocery shopping, and I thought I'd make a video, even though I don't feel like making a video, but I don't want, I mentioned in last recent videos that my wife and we went to Grand Rapids. I think it was last week. And I think it was last week, Wednesday, we went to Grand Rapids. My wife is in charge of the women's ministry at her church on education, and she had to buy some more extra women's Bible study booklets or books on the Epistle to the Romans. My wife is using this. She's reading this as she's working on her Bible lessons on Romans. This is a good commentary on Romans in the New Testament. Romans, Baker, Exegetical Commentary in the New Testament by Thomas Schneider. She's been reading this. She asked me the other day, what's a good basic commentary on Romans? Not too technical, and I mentioned reading this. And then she wanted a Bible dictionary because she comes across all these words in Romans. And I recommended this dictionary, Paul in his letters. Editors Gerard A. Hawthorne, Ralph P. Martin, and Daniel G. Reed. Compendium of Contemporary Biblical Scholarship. So my wife was using these the other day as she's working on her Bible study. She has to teach some of these sessions, and so we had to go to Reformation Heritage Books. They're the ones that publish the study on Romans for women, the Bible study. And I decided to go with her because I hadn't been to the Reformation Heritage Books bookstore in a long, long time. So on the way to Grand Rapids, we had to pick up our taxes, our tax man, and then we went to the Christian Reformation bookstore. And when I walked in, Steve, the manager, who I hadn't seen in years, said, "Johnny," he said, "Hi, Johnny." He said, "I've been watching your videos." Steve, many years ago, there was Baker Bookhouse bookstore here in Holland, and when I'd buy books there, Steve and I would talk all the time, and then he wound up being manager at the Christian Reformation bookstore, and he's been there like 15 years, married and has children. So we had a little time. He showed us around, and I was absolutely amazed how huge Reformation Heritage Books had gotten over the years. And that's why I could see why they had bought a building in Grand Rapids, and they're going to move all their operation there. They have a warehouse, a bigger store, and they're going to because they were we went down in the basement, and he showed us huge areas of just boxes and boxes and boxes of books. And when you walk into the bookstore, it's not really a bookstore. It's just books and display. It's not really actually a bookstore. But they have books that you can look at in this room and that you walk into, and there's people working all around you. So my wife got her some books, and she got her Bible study, and I bought some books. And this is what I bought. Well, one of the books I wanted to get was this book. It was on sale. It was this book. It's The Theology of Bb Warfield, a systematic summary by Fred G. Zaspil. I many years ago, I was really, well, I'm still into Bb Warfield. He was a professor of theology at Princeton. He lived from, let me see, what was his years? Well, I can't remember his years now, but when I graduated from Reformed Bible College, my wife bought me the works of Bb Warfield, and I bought other writings of Bb Warfield. Is one of my favorite. Yeah, he was born in 1851 and he died in 1921. So I got that. That was on sale. I was going to show you the works of Warfield and all the writings, but maybe some other time. And then they had another book that was on sale for $10. Was this one. I like this series here. This is for $10. This is Reformed Historical Theological Studies, Doctrine and Development, Johannes Piscator and the Debates over Christ's Act of Obedience by Herman Carlos de Campos Jr. So I like this series. I have a couple of them down in the lower level, and I enjoy reading. I have the Introduction to Reformed Scholasticism, the Spiritual Brotherhood, Unity and Continuity and Covenantal Thought, now Doctrine and Development. I really like this series. And then as I looked around, I found a lot of books I had not seen or had gotten off my radar, and so I just bought. I could have bought a lot more books, but these are the ones I bought just because they looked interesting and kind of things I like to read about. I bought this book, Spirit of Holiness, Reflections on Biblical Spirituality, by editors Terry Delaney and Robert D. Duke. Contributors include Albert Moeller Jr., Joel R. Beakey, and Michael A. G. Hagen. I like reading books on Christian spirituality, pursuing after holiness. And there's an essay in here that looked interesting, among others. The Sixth Sense of Jonathan Edwards by Tom J. Nettles, who's a very famous Baptist scholar, theologian. And then I showed this. This had been out for a while, but I had just gotten off the radar, and I like reading systematic theology, Reformed Dogmatics. I've shown this one, Concise Reformed Dogmatics, by J. Van Gerdingen and W. H. Velema. These are from translated out of the Dutch. They're from the Netherlands, and so I've been reading this on the Doctrine of God the last couple of days. This is a book by Carl R. Trueman. It's more like cultural study, intellectual trends in American culture, the rise and triumph of the modern self, cultural amnesia, expressive individualism, and the road to sexual revolution by Carl R. Trueman. Carl R. Trueman teaches, is professor of biblical and religious studies at Grover City College. He is an esteemed church historian, previously served as William E. Simon Fellow in Religion and Public Life at Princeton University. Trueman is a member of the Orthodox Presbyterian Church. So this is a new book, just came out, and I wanted to read this. And then this book I had never seen before, but I am into American church history, the history of American revivalism, the Great Awakening, and the history of evangelism and revivalism. And I found this book, Theologies of the American Revivalists, From Whitefield to Finney by Robert W. Catwell III. Yeah, I like reading about American history, the Great Awakening, the Second Great Awakening, reading about Charles Finney and George Whitefield and Jonathan Edwards, and it looked really interesting. I showed you this book. I'm into the Psalms, the history of Psalms, the hermeneutics, how it's been interpreted, medieval, Reformation, modern times. Psalms of Faithful, Luther's early readings of the Psalter in canonical context by Brian T. German. I've been reading this. This is a good series too, Studies in Historical and Systematic Theology. I have a couple of these down the lower level. I recommend them. And then this goes back to Bb Warfield, who is one of the professors of Princeton Theological Seminary. And this is The Right Reason in the Princeton Mind, Unorthodox, a proposal by Paul Kjoss Helseth. It says here, the Orthodox consensus is that Presbyterian professors at Old Princeton Seminary, 1812 to 1929, portrayed traditional Reformed theology by claiming that human reason was in a certain significant ways unaffected by the fall. Through a masterful examination of the Old Princeton's writings, Paul Helseth turns the Orthodox interpretation on its head, showing what Alexander, Hodge, Warfield, and others actually believed regarding the power of reason. So I have books on Old Princeton. I have the writings of Charles Hodge, Bb Warfield, Archibald Alexander, and the Old Princetons, and this goes into American history. So yeah. American history, American church history. And then I got this book I had never seen before, and I bought it. It's called The Art of Living to God, a study of method and piety and the Theoretical Practica Theologia of Petrus van Minstret, who lived in 1630 to 1706. I got these because I wanted to they've been translating and publishing the Theoretical Practical Theology by Petrus van Minstret. The third volume comes out this spring, and I've shown these in past videos, so I wanted an introduction to that to go along with these. So I bought this to put them together. So now I have all these together. Yeah, and this is by Adrian C. Nettle. So that's what I got. So that's the books that I got at Reformation Heritage Books. I could have bought a lot more when they open the new store sometime in the spring or summer. Carol and I are going to go over there for the grand opening, and I'm going to be prepared to spend a lot more money. I did get a book in the mail yesterday, Allen Ginsberg, The Fall of American Journals, 1965 to 1971, edited by Michael Schumacher. So I've been reading this. I read this last night, and I've been reading in the mornings for devotions, Reformed Dogmatics. I was reading volume 4 yesterday. I'm reading volume 3, Sin, Salvation in Christ by Herman Bavinck. See, I read this because when I'm reading The Life of Jesus Christ by Ludolf of Saxony, you come across with Catholic medieval doctrine, and I wanted to read in contrast to Catholic doctrine, the Reformation, why they disagreed with the Catholics. So I wanted to, and he goes really into explaining how erroneous Catholic doctrine is on certain issues and setting forth the biblical Reformed position on certain doctrines, especially on salvation. So yeah, that's the books. That's what I'm reading in the mornings, reading Reformed Dogmatics, writing in my diary. Now I can put down these books down the lower level. Now I do keep these in my main study, because like I said, I'm reading this General and Special Revelation, Concise Reformed Dogmatics. I have been reading The Art of Living to God, and I read these off and on. I was reading these the other day on, what was I reading the other day? On the immensity and omnipresence of God, on the doctrine of God. So what I did, I took out of my main study all my ancient commentaries series, and I replaced them with all my, not all of it, but the systematic theologies and Reformed dogmatics that I'm always reading all the time. And I said, why do I keep going downstairs, bringing them up here, going downstairs, bringing them up here? So I brought them all up here the other night so I can be at my disposal. I brought up my 4 volumes of Herman's Reformed Dogmatics, which is my favorite of Reformed Dogmatics, is Bavinck. And if I had room in my main study, I'd bring up all my writings of Bb Warfield, who's one of my favorites. So yeah, so that's my reading life for Monday, March the 1st, 2021. And like I said, the death flow keeps flowing. Nothing going on this week. I don't have any books coming in the mail. I don't have any used books to show you. And I'm just writing in my diary. My wife said the other night, your books, you go downstairs and you get books, you bring books up, you take books downstairs, you go downstairs looking for books, you go to thrift stores looking for books, you order books online waiting for them to come in the mail, you dream of bookcases, you're always books. And that's my life, is books. It's always been that way, except when I had to go to school, when I was raising our children and working. But I am a bookworm. That's my life, is books, and writing in my diary, writing down my existence in words and books and libraries and bookstores, and looking at book reviews and dreaming of books. And I go downstairs in the lower level and just look at my books and searching for books, finding books I had forgotten about. It just goes on and on, just books. So I hope you had a good reading weekend. I hope you have a good new week. We're going into March, and we're getting closer to the spring. March 20th is the first day of spring. And today it's supposed to be a little bit warmer. The snow is melting. The birds are singing. We have robins singing in the morning, and birds want to start building their nests and getting ready to have their babies. So thank you for the many comments. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the new subscribers. And do pray that you have a good new reading week. Until next time, bye.